One of the main questions I get from students and people who want to do astrology readings is, now that I've been studying and learning, how do I start doing readings? And some people jump into it really easily, but some people really struggle in making that step from having studied some astrology into doing readings. And the way I most commonly ask this question is, how do I integrate all the things I've learned to do a reading? And so I wanted to make this video to talk about some tips of what you can do to make stepping into doing readings much more smooth, easy, and most importantly, where you have much more success with your readings. Because the most important thing is that when you start, you have success that you can feel good about. Okay? So to start with, the first thing you need to have is techniques. Okay? Learn techniques. Now, what I find a lot of people do is they're not learning techniques, they're learning principles. For instance, a planet debilitated, Jupiter debilitated in Capricorn, Mars debilitated in Cancer, is a principle. It's not a technique. You can't do anything with that information as far as reading a chart. You can take that information, that principle, and apply it to a technique that uses that principle, and now you're reading charts. But what a lot of people try to do, in fact, I'd say one of the most common things people try to do is, they learn a lot of principles, and then they try to integrate those principles into reading a chart. No, it'll never work. Learn the principles, learn techniques that use those principles, and you use the technique to read the chart. You don't use principles to read a chart. Okay? Very, very important. And that's why a lot of people ask me, how do I integrate all this? They're basically saying, out of all these principles I've learned, how do I begin to make a technique out of it? Well, it's because they learned wrong in the beginning. We need to learn techniques, and as part of techniques, you're going to learn principles that apply to those techniques. And then you're going to be integrated in that technique. You're going to know, yes, this technique requires these principles. It doesn't require this and this and this and this and this, that principle. Those principles all go to other techniques. So learn your astrology that way, as techniques, not principles. This is a very difficult thing to do. And that's why I get so many people asking me that question. How do I integrate all this stuff, all these principles? The reason being because the most recent tradition of Vedic astrology has emphasized a single school of techniques. And that school of techniques is yogas. Yogas are a fantastic technique. Okay, yoga is a technique, the yogas. And this is such the most commonly prevalent technique in India, especially traditionally. It's been changing in recent years, but traditionally it's all about yogas. Learn yogas. Yogas are planetary permutations that give a particular effect. And this has become such a common way of doing charts that in India, people will go to an astrologer and the astrologer will say, you have a yoga for marriage next year. Or the person will come and say, yeah, I had a reading and they said I had a yoga for marriage. It's always a yoga for this, a yoga for that, a yoga for that coming up in the dashas. And in the old books, the majority of books are just chapters of yogas and yogas and yogas and yogas, thousands of yogas. The better books have a chapter on every house, and every one of those chapters has anywhere from 50 to 500 yogas in it. So we're dealing with thousands of yogas. Now show me an astrologer who has thousands of yogas memorized. You won't find them anymore. It used to be astrologers used to memorize all those yogas. And then when they looked at a chart, with their inner perceptive ability, a yoga would jump out at them that they had in their memory, and they would see that yoga and go, aha, this is it. So it's a really easy technique. Memorize thousands of yogas, look at charts, see which yogas jump out at you, make amazing predictions. It works great. I've learned a lot of yogas, and I've done a lot of great predictions with yogas. It's a really valid technique. The problem is people don't want to memorize millions of things. What I did is I had all my classical books, like 45 books that were in English at the time, and I would go through each section, like I'd go through, say, spirituality, and I'd write down by hand all the yogas on spirituality. And then I'd write down all the yogas on, some other topic. So I grouped all these yogas from many, many books into these big, long files of anywhere from, the smallest was like 54 yogas for mental illness yogas, to well over 700-800 yogas in context of like relationship stuff, seventh house factors, and diseases, okay? And as I wrote those down, a lot of the yogas just got stuck in my head. They were memorized, okay? A lot of them didn't get memorized, but enough did that I was able to make a lot of predictions with yogas. Now, a lot of people think we can just take yoga and program into the computer, and the computer will spit out all the yogas in the chart and you can do a reading. It won't work that way, because you need to have them memorized. You have to know the yogas, and then the right yoga will jump out at you. It's like your intuition will say, this yoga. But if you're presented with 500 yogas from a chart and you have to weed through all that, you're going to be miserably confused. So yogas is the principal technique of Indian astrology. Sri Yukteswar said at the end of the 1800s, he said, astrology is a science, and it works with replicable principles, with replicable techniques, you know. And he goes, however, it's mostly just been done with memorizing yogas. He goes, but the real way to do astrology is with techniques, okay? Since then, we've been fortunate in that some techniques, schools of techniques have developed. It's really just been the last 100 and some years that astrologers have been going, I don't want to memorize all that stuff. I want to understand what's happening, and out of the understanding have a technique that covers what I need to do. So one of the earlier schools that was a very technique-centered school was Krishnamurti. Okay? Krishnamurti developed a technique. The Iyer system from, I think, around the 70s, 80s, was a technique. He developed a technique that, okay, let's apply and read these principles into this technique and do it. And then the systems approach is another technique-centered school. However, all of these techniques really pale in comparison, in my opinion, to what you find in Brihat Parashara, and especially in Jaimini Sutras. Those books are very, very technique-rich compared to all the other books out there, which are mostly yoga-rich. The Jaimini Sutras and Brihat Parashara are technique-centered books for the most part. However, there's been a lot of problems with those books, and learning from those books, I should say, and that's why you don't see a lot of true techniques being used from those books. All right. The two reasons are, it wasn't until the late 1800s and even later 1900s, early 1900s for Jaimini, that we even had access to these two texts. Brihat Parashara was recompiled in the late 1800s by a guy who went around India picking up little scraps of paper and saying, I think this is Brihat Parashara, and so I'm going to include it. As a result, there's a lot of good stuff in that text, and there's also some things that were never part of the original text. So it's not a perfect text by any means, but it has a lot of good stuff. In my opinion, the single best technique in that text is the Lajitadya Avashtas. So, and so that's one problem with Parashara. It's not a perfect text. We don't have the original. There was a famous commentator on all the astrological books running around in the 11th century. And he commentated on Varaha Mihira's books and all kinds of books. And he was the most widely read astrologer. And at the time, in one of the commentaries he wrote, I have heard of Brihat Parashara, but I've never seen that book. I've never laid eyes on that text. He's never even seen it. And it wasn't until recent years that we actually have one. There's a rumor of there being a Brihat Parashara text that was printed in the 1600s. However, I haven't seen it. It was much shorter than the Brihat Parashara than we currently have, which it has only had half the chapters of our current Brihat Parashara. And some people think that's the original one. But it's not in print in any way you can get it. It's not in Xerox copy. It's not online. I hear you can get it through some universities, but some people I've known have tried to find it and haven't got their hands on it. So it'd be great to get that and compare it to the modern one we have. But I think it's good to know that the modern Parashara we have is not the original text by any means, okay? So we can't use it as gospel. All we can do is see what's in it and apply our intelligence and see what works. The other problem with Parashara, he mostly gives lots of calculations. Calculate this, and this is this strength, and this is this avashta. But he never tells us what to do with them. He gives us a technique, but doesn't say what it's for. So we have to figure out how to put the techniques together and use them. He gives lots of math and calculations. Now what do we do? So it takes a lot of work to understand how to use all the gifts that are in Brihat Parashara. Okay? And we've only had access to that for really 150, not even 150 years probably. Okay? So there's certainly a reemergence of technique-centered astrology with the recompilation of Brihat Parashara. And it was shortly after that that more astrologers started focusing on technique-centered astrology systems, okay? As I mentioned. Then in Jaimini Sutras, he's perfect. Step by step, do this, then do this, then do this, and you're done with the technique. The problem with Jaimini, it's written in coded Sanskrit. So nobody will agree on what Jaimini wants you to do. But Jaimini is very telling you in very clearly coded language. So it's also a head buster that will take years of dedicated study to learn. And in the early 1900s, in the Jaimini Sutras that were available, there were only 2 out of 4 chapters. And they were saying, sadly, we only have 2 chapters. But at some point, they found a missing half of Jaimini. And now we have 4 sutras, 4 chapters of Jaimini. Some people say there's 8 chapters to Jaimini. I don't think so. I think 4 is probably all there is. So now it's only been about 100 years since we've had the full Jaimini Sutras book. But that doesn't solve the problem of it being in coded Sanskrit. Okay? So we're very fortunate to be living at this time of astrology re-emerging as a technique-centered art instead of an art of endless memorization of yogas. Okay? Not that yogas is not a good way to go, but the modern man doesn't want to memorize millions of permutations and millions of sutras. We just don't want to, And so our brains don't have the patience with it. The hecticness of life doesn't allow for it. And it just doesn't happen. So, learn techniques. Okay, study techniques. Don't learn principles and think you can read a chart with a principle. That's the biggest mistake I would say people make when they try to read a chart. Okay? You learn a technique, you apply what's in that technique, the principles in that technique, you get a result, and you ignore everything else. Okay, you did that technique. That technique will give you something about that chart that you can use. And that's all you do. Next is study. Study is a huge part, right? The problem with astrologers is that astrologers love to study astrology. It's one of our biggest problems. We're all a bunch of people who like to just hide away with our books and our videos and get away from the horrible world we live in and all the pain and abuse of life and crawl into a hole and study and study and study and study. But see, studying never gets you anywhere. Studying just gives you information. It doesn't allow you to read a horoscope. Okay? It's like I could read a book on open heart surgery. And I could learn that book and I could read it over and over again and I can think about it a lot. I can study it. But would you have me do open heart surgery on you? Even if I could talk with all the greatest surgeons of the world and keep up with them on the subject of open heart surgery because I had read all the books on the subject, would you want me to do surgery on you? And you would say, hell no, please don't, because I haven't practiced the surgery. No matter how much I know, until I practice the open heart surgery, there's no way I'm going to do it right. In fact, I'm going to do it wrong the first few times. Okay? With astrology, it's the same way. Knowing facts, studying astrology just gives us facts. We have to practice what we learn. We should spend more time practicing than studying. But practicing is hard work. That's the third house. The third house is the house of practice and developing a skill of something. The information that you get from studying is just information. It's not going to allow you to do anything until you practice it. So everything you study, every technique you learn, and it's fun to study and learn, it's entertaining and it's interesting to have all these concepts, it's interesting to figure out things about yourself as you're learning it. And that's great, especially the part of learning about yourself as you're studying and watching videos and reading books, and it's really a great way to grow. But if you want to read charts of other people after all that, you have to practice the technique you learned. I always tell everyone, practice on at least 10 charts. Every technique, practice on at least 10 charts. Get 10 charts you know and do the technique. Don't go on to the next technique. Do this technique, see how you like it. Practice, practice, practice. Really, you should practice 10 times as much as you study. Okay? If you learn one technique and practice it and become, practiced in it, you will be a better astrologer than an astrologer who knows 1,000 techniques who hasn't practiced any of them. Okay? Now, part of what's great about practice is it lets you see what technique works with you. Your system, your intelligence, let me say, is geared in a certain way. Your intelligence is going to work better with different things. So you need to practice with the techniques and see how it works for you. Yes, the way I am makes this technique really work. And I really find that with my best students, what they've consistently told me is, yeah, I don't really like that technique. It doesn't work for me, but this one I really like. And that's, you would think that would be an offensive thing to hear. Oh, you can't get that technique to work. Oh gosh, did I teach you wrong? No, I consider that a pleasant thing to hear. Because that means the person practiced this technique. They practiced this technique. They found one technique to work for them. The other one they didn't, so they stopped focusing on that. And then every time what that person, those people did, is they practiced that technique so much that down the road, they were telling me better ways to use the technique. They became so skilled in it, they were saying, yeah, now I'm doing this with this and it's working even better for me. I'm like, oh, cool, let me practice that now. Because as you practice something, you make it work, and then the next step is you make it even work better, and as you continue to practice it, you make it work better. Because there's a subtlety to reading a chart, and there's a confidence you need to acquire in reading a chart, and you get that through practice. So practice your technique. See what technique works for you. If it doesn't work for you, try a different technique. And keep the techniques that work. You can't do every technique I'm going to teach you in a reading. So do the technique that you've practiced and that works for you. Okay? That technique will get you home and let you do a good job on that chart. In fact, if you practice your techniques and become skilled in them, God is only going to send you clients who is only going to send you clients who are going to benefit from that technique, who you're going to do a good reading with that technique. And it's miraculous how this happens. I remember once I learned a technique, I was studying a Canral book, and it was if the Navamsha Lord of the Moon or the Lagna Lord is in the 12th house, a person will be poor. Okay? So I learned that technique, and I tried it on a couple charts, and said, wow, it sort of worked. These people didn't really do good in money. Then I had a chart, and I looked at the chart, every wealth yoga in the book, like wealth, wealth, wealth. Every planet was saying wealth somehow. Okay? And then I was starting to put the chart down, and I said, wait a minute. And I lifted the chart up, and I saw, oh, it had this other yoga, this poverty yoga. Not only was the Navamsha Lord of the Lagna in the 12th, the Navamsha Lord of the Moon was also in the 12th. And that's in the 12th in the Rashi chart. So you take the Navamsha Lord from the Lagna Lord from the Rashi, see what Navamsha it's in, see its Lord, and see what's in the 12th house in the Rashi chart. So they had both of these. So when they came in, I said, you've been to astrologers, right? And they said, yes, I have. I said, everyone told you they're going to be really wealthy. They said, yes, they all said that. I said, and when you heard that, you said, no, I'm not wealthy. She goes, yep, I told every one of them that. I said, and then I said, and after you said that, they said, well, don't worry, one day you'll be really wealthy. She said, yep, they all said that, every one of them. I said, well, I'm here to tell you that you're never going to be wealthy. And she just smiled and got happy and beaming. You would think I'm telling this horrible prediction, you're never going to be wealthy. And she was just so happy to hear that news. And what she said was, yeah, I'm glad to hear that because every astrologer has told me I'm wealthy or I'm going to be super wealthy. And I don't care about money. Money's not even a goal. And I was wondering if I was doing something wrong in my life or not living out my chart. So I'm really glad to hear that money is just not going to be the biggest part of my life. Okay? She wasn't like in dire poverty because she had lots of wealth yoga, so she wasn't poor, but she never reached the level of wealth of, she was just middle class, she wasn't wealthy by any means. But again, I learned the technique, I practiced the technique, and so God sent me a person who could benefit from that technique, So trust that if you study and practice the technique, God's only going to send you the people who that technique's going to work on. So you don't have to worry about the other 999,000 techniques out there. Okay? Learn more techniques if you want to try more things. Learn more techniques if you want to predict different types of things. But if you want to be a better astrologer, practice your technique that you know. Okay? One of the best astrologers I ever met was as far as results, was Rajiv Janji. I had the pleasure of working with him in India. Really great, wonderful person. And he would people would come to him and he would just look at the most simple things. I'd be rolling my eyes going, God, doesn't this guy like have any technical depth? Every prediction was right. In fact, we were like laying on bed in a hotel room. You know, he was on his bed, I was on my bed, and we were both staring at the ceiling. He goes, tell me about your planetary positions. I told my planetary positions. He goes, oh wow, you just had a breakup right before coming to India. You know, just boom. And I said, how come? He goes, well, and it was such a simple thing. He goes, you just finished Sun-Venus Dasha, and Sun-Venus Dasha will end a relationship. And he said, and in your case, since Venus is in the 8th or something like that, it's most certain going to happen. So, really simple. And a lot of his stuff was more simple than that. That's actually a really cool Vimshatari Dasha technique. But most of his stuff wasn't even that complex. But he was right every time. I never saw this guy miss a prediction. Okay? So, because he practiced the techniques he knew. And he was a very good astrologer. So, practice it so you can do it. And so you can do it better. And the more you practice it, the better you'll get. Being good at something doesn't have to do with knowledge. It has to do with skill. Skill and knowledge are completely different things, you know. Skill is being able to apply yourself in a successful way. And that only comes from practice, okay? All right. Then, one of the most important things, integrate. Now, people feel like this is really important. They always ask me, as I mentioned, how do I integrate what I know to read charts? If you're asking that question, you need to go back to step 1, techniques, and learn techniques, not principles. If you learn techniques, there's nothing to integrate on that level because you've already integrated your principles into a technique. And you just need to study it and practice it, okay? How I see integration is integration of yourself as a capable person to read charts, all right? Now that integration is about using your male-centered intelligence, the intelligence of your sun, with your female-centered intelligence or the intelligence of your moon, which is the all-knowing intelligence. Brihat Parashar says the moon is intelligent. The sun is intelligent and the moon is all-knowing. All right? So if you want to be a good astrologer, you have to use both those intelligences. You can't be a good astrologer just using your male intelligence. That's like taking the yogas and searching on your software for all the yogas, compiling all the yogas and saying, okay, now let me sort out with my intelligence this mess of yogas and do a reading. You'll never be successful and you do horrible readings, okay? But if you memorize all the yogas, then when you look at your chart, your feminine intelligence is connected to all those yogas your male side has memorized, that your intellectual side has memorized. And it's going to look at that chart and in an instant it's going to know this yoga is in this chart and it's going to work. So that's the only yoga you're going to see. And the yoga that you have memorized that's in this chart that's not going to work on this chart, your all-knowing moon, female intelligence goes, I'm not going to pay attention. I don't even see that yoga. It doesn't even see that yoga. It misses it. So you need to integrate your male and female sides, your male and female intelligence to be a great astrologer as far as doing readings, especially when it comes to predictions. Okay? I would say you can't predict well if you don't integrate your male and female sides. What's the most effective way of integrating your male and female side? Have a great girlfriend? Nope, it's not that easy. The best way is to meditate. Viva Rahman used to say, if you want to be good at making predictions, meditate. His kids thought that he was going to teach them all kinds of special techniques that he didn't teach anyone else. And what he said? Go meditate if you want to be a good astrologer. Because when you meditate, you're bringing your solar and lunar currents, your sun and moon intelligence together in your system, in your energy system, and into your brain, and your brain starts functioning on a much higher level, the level you need to do readings. You're not going to be able to make successful predictions without that integration. Viva Rahman personally attributes his predictions to having done the Gayatri mantra over and over and over again throughout the entirety of his life. So that's Gayatri mantra is to the sun, of course, which is the planet that all the other planets revolve around. A lot of the astrological books will start with a prayer to the sun or to Gayatri. And so that's a good one for you. Those who don't have a spiritual practice, start doing the Gayatri mantra. But whatever your spiritual work of integrating your male and female sides into a healthy, dynamic, useful, and synergistic force is what's going to allow you to do it. Because you're going to learn your techniques, and you're going to apply your techniques with your rational male side, with your solar intelligence. But now, there's always something wrong. First of all, a technique's never perfect. Life is too complex to have perfect techniques, like absolutely perfect techniques. The reason being because the chart is too complex. There's always something in the chart that can throw things off a bit. You know, not only that, do you have the right birth time? And really think about that. Take twins. I got twins. They're born 1 minute apart. They're different. You know, they're not the same. They're identical twins, but they're still not. They're not exactly the same. You know, they don't go around fooling everybody. You know, they act differently. They talk differently. They do different things, and most importantly, different things happen to them at different times. And lots of times, when something happens to another person, it never ever happens to another person. Their Rashi chart, exactly the same. You know, 1 minute of time equals 1/4 of a degree. So, you know, literally 15 minutes of arc different in the Baba cusp, in the ascendant cusp. Okay? However, that 1 minute difference creates a lot of changes in the Vargas with respect to Baba cusp. So in one Varga, the Lagna Lord will be in the 12th house, and another Varga, the Lagna Lord will end up being in the, 5th house. Because the Lagna changed in that particular Varga in that 1 minute. It didn't change in the Rashi Varga, but that one little Varga. So there was a change made there. So if you consider that 1 minute of birth time can make so much difference in people's lives, then, seriously, there's only been one time in almost 17 years where I can think of my twins having had the same thing happen to them on the same day, other than their birthdays. And that is, in the morning one day, one of my daughters was leaving my office. You know how 6, 7-year-old, however old, young kids, they run everywhere. She wiped out at the foot of the stairs at my office. Just wiped out, planted herself into the base of the stairs. 3 or 4 hours later, my other daughter's running through the living room to run up to her room where she has to go up a flight of stairs, wipes out at the base of the stairs. And I thought, oh my God, today is the first day that they both had an accident on the same day at the foot of the stairs. That was like, wow. Of course, it didn't even happen at the same time, That was the closest thing that's happened to them at the same time. Otherwise, it's always different. One gets sick, the other one doesn't get sick, One comes home, had a great day at school, the other one had a horrible day at school, 1 minute of time. Which, now, since I have exact birth times for them, it would be possible to look at their charts and look at all the difference in the Vargas and make the predictions based on those slight differences. And I had to do that when they were born. One got stuck in the hospital, one had to stay, one came home. So the one that was stuck, I'm like, why did that happen? So I examined the Vargas, and I saw that in one Varga, with the Dasha running, the Lagna Lord was in the 12th, and they were running the Rashi Dasha of that Lagna Lord in the 12th. So they were stuck in the hospital, which is 12th house. And I said, oh, great, that's why. And then I predicted that on the Saturday, that we would be able to get her home, that finally the third level Dasha was going to change, and that 12th house influence was going to go away, and I'd be able to pick her up. With Jaimini, you work down to 3 Dashas, with Jaimini Rashi Dashas. So Friday I called the hospital, I said, oh, when can we pick her up? They're like, oh, it's not looking good at all. I think it's going to be several days still. And I was very bummed because we couldn't bring her home. And I was even more bummed because I apparently had bombed that prediction. But then the next morning, which was the day I'd predicted, they called us out of the blue and they said, okay, you can come get her today. So the prediction came out perfectly, we went and got her. So, using those minute differences in the Vargas, yeah, we can do it. However, if we know their time's exactly right, we can do that. And then we have to go through all that work of minutely analyzing every Varga and every Baba cusp and every Varga. There's a Baba cusp change in one Varga every 48 seconds. Okay? There's going to be, the Lagna will change in some Varga every 48 seconds. But there's 12 cusps. One of those cusps is going to change every, 8 seconds. Okay, why 8 seconds, not 4 seconds? Because bhava cusps are opposite each other. So they always change 2 at a time. So that means there's going to be a change in 2 cusps 6 times in 48 seconds, which gives us, which is 8 times. Every 8 seconds, 2 cusps are going to change in some vargas somewhere. So in a minute birth time, which is say 7 times 8, you're going to have 7 pairs of bhava cusps change somewhere in some varga. And so in that 1 minute we get a completely different life. That's all it takes, just that little bit. And so to look for all that, to analyze all the male side, oh my God, do you even have the capacity, mental capacity to do that without freaking out? You could do it, it's going to be brutally painful, all right? But your female side will make up for those little missing points. It'll be able to just use the Rashi chart and maybe 1 or 2 vargas. And it'll just not let you see something that you don't need to see, and it'll make you see what you need to see to make the right prediction. And it'll carry you home. Okay? A lot of people use their female sides too much, on the other hand. They will, just see what the chart gives them. And that's fine. However, if they haven't developed their male side, their technique centered, I know actually how to do astrology side, that there's a process to it, that they know how to do astrology intellectually, then they don't have anything to work with. After their initial impressions, they can run out of information. Whereas if you have a technique, you apply the technique, and as you use the technique, it gives your female side the opportunity to say, yes, yep, say this, yep, do it. And then you'll never be able to stop reading a chart, because you can always apply a technique, and your female side will come along and polish that technique and make it work perfectly. Even if the birth time's off, which it almost always is. What's the chance of somebody's birth time being within a minute, being accurate within a minute? It's not really great. Even if it's 30 seconds, that still means there's 4 vargas that are off somewhere. 4 pairs of bhava cusps that are off in some vargas that are affecting the accuracy of your reading. So there is these things that are going to be wrong. Your technique will only be so well developed. Your birth time will only be so accurate. Okay, not only that, they're born in LA. Wonderful. So you type LA into your address, and they're like, I got the exact time in LA. And you go, great, what's that exact time? You write down the exact time. But let's say they were born 3 miles from downtown LA. Then when you put LA into your atlas, you're getting slightly different coordinates than where they were actually born. And all of a sudden, you got a bhava cusp running some varga. You're never going to have a perfect chart. And your male side, even if it was all brilliant and a perfect technician, how's it going to make up for those errors? But your female side will make up for all those loose ends. It'll make up for all the things that are missing or wrong. And it'll do an amazing job sometimes. So bring your female side for a ride. If you're naturally intuitive and you naturally, just look at a chart and let things come to you, good. Keep that, learn some real techniques, and then apply them and watch how much better you get, and how much more ground you can cover, and how many more predictions you can make. You won't be limited to just what comes to you. You'll be able to look at for anything, and as you start looking, your female side will let more things to come to you. So you learn techniques, apply techniques, and let your female side guide you in what you do and use with those techniques. And then you're an integrated astrologer, okay? Now, one of the main things to do that, like I said, is meditate. The other really main thing to do that is not to work too hard, okay? Because work is male side. The minute you start working too hard, your female side is left at home. It's not coming with, and then she won't be there to keep you out of trouble with your readings. By working too hard, I mean doing too much prep work. One of the most common mistakes I see people doing is doing so much prep work on the chart, like 3 or 4 hours of preparatory work, and by the time they're done, they have a whole notepad scribbled full of notes, And this is all male work. This is all intellectual, sun-brained work. So now they're really in their male side with this chart. And then when they try to read a chart, their female side is like fell asleep, because it got bored with all that stuff, and it's watching a movie in the background, doesn't even want anything to do with astrology. Then you try to read a chart, and you can't make sense of it all. I did 3 hours of prep work, and all I am is overwhelmed and confused, is what happens. Don't do too much prep work. I used to always think, okay, this is what I'm going to look at in the chart, and I write down the things. This is what I'm going to look at in the chart before they come. And get all this ready. So I get it ready. And then they'd come and it would be like I'd be drawing a blank. And I would just have to reach for something else. I just have to look at the chart and see what popped out at me and start talking about that. I would have to give up all that work I'd done and just say, all right, female side, what do I see in this chart? And I would just look at Venus. For some reason, Venus would just say, hey, look at me, look at me. So I'd read Venus and talk about Venus, and the reading would get going and keep going for a good period of time. So if you over prep work and you get too intellectually involved in that chart, you're going to stunt your ability to do a magical reading. Okay, because you're doing magic here. What is magic? Magic is walking on water. Magic is doing things that are hard, impossible, like making predictions. Magic works when your male and female sides are integrated. You know, yoga, hatha yoga, what is that? Stretching? No, hatha yoga has nothing to do with stretching. That's asana, that's postures. Hatha yoga is bringing your ha and tha, your solar and lunar currents, together into your spine and up into your brain, so your brain wakens up and you're a yogi who can do cool stuff, who can do magic. And doing predictions is a type of that magic. And the astrology chart facilitates that by getting our male side going, our male intelligence working that chart, but we need our female side, which we get by meditating, get in touch with that, and that actually integrates them. But by just being open and allowing ourselves to go with the flow is what we need for our female side. So it's important to do both of those. And getting overly intellectualized will create so many blocks and so many preconceptions that all of a sudden you can't be open to what your female side's saying. Your female side's saying, say this. You're like, but I saw in this Varga chart that Venus was debilitated, so there's no way I'm going to say that. And your female side's like, doesn't matter. Who cares? It's going to come true. This is the right thing to say on this chart. But your male side's like, nope, I'm not going to say it because I've already prep worked it and that can't be true. So don't over prep a chart. It'll do two things. It'll make you work too many hours. So by the time you're done, you're not going to get paid enough, or you have to charge so much money nobody wants to come to you. You're going to pull your hair out and look funny because you're bald at a young age. And you're not going to have any fun. Why? Because you're missing the magic of it. So your prep work should be get comfortable with the chart. Get a feel of the chart. Get comfortable with it. Okay? So that you're just kind of familiar with it. That's what I do. I look at the chart and get comfortable with it. I go, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Oh, that's kind of scary. I just get kind of comfortable with what's there in the chart. And then I put it down. Sometimes that might take as much as 20 minutes. At most. At most. Sometimes, I remember once, the chart came out of the printer. I looked at the chart, one glance, dropped it. That was it. Okay, I'm ready. Next day the person came in, did a fantastic long reading. Okay? Get comfortable with the chart. Now, everyone's going to take a different amount of time to get comfortable. Now, by comfortable, I don't mean you know the chart, you have figured out the chart, you understand the chart, and your left side is all happy. No, I'm saying comfortable. Comfortable is more feminine, right? It's the feminine side that wants comfort. Get to that chart doesn't just, you know a few things about it. You see a few things in there that are familiar. That's what comfort is. It's familiarity. Oh yeah, Mars is in Cancer with Rahu. Yeah, I know a person who has that. I've seen that. I'm comfortable with that. I know what that sort of feels like. Get comfortable. Oh, K2's in this house. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that idea. Just get a little comfortable. You don't have to know the whole chart. Get comfortable with it. So now when they come in, you're comfortable in a good place. You've learned your techniques, you've studied them, and you practice. So you're ready to go with your technique. So you don't have to do it all before they get there. You need your female side to be there, be welcome, because you're comfortable with the chart. And so now your female side, you're going to look at the chart, and your female's going to side and say, start with that planet. Just start talking about that planet, and you're going to say, oh, this planet's in here, and you're going to start working it with your male side and female side, handing it off to each other, working together. Your female side says, start with this chart, and your male side says, okay, I'll start with this planet. This planet's debilitated. Oh, and it's in the 7th house, so I should go look at the Saptamsha, because the Saptamsha has to do with 7th house, and your female side go, yeah, go to the Saptamsha, see what's there. And you'll go to the Saptamsha, or maybe your female side say, actually, just go to the Navamsha. That has to do with 7th house and marriage and stuff too. So you go, okay, I'm just going to go to this, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to go to the Navamsha. And you go in the Vamsha and you see something there and you say something, they're like, oh my God, how did you know that? That's how it works, okay? That's the integration we have to make as an astrologer. And it's not hard to do if we don't get in the way of ourselves. The most common way we get in the way is over-intellectualizing, okay? The most common way we don't get in the way of ourselves is don't study too much, practice more than you study. Because when you practice more, you're developing a skill. Skills are ruled by Mercury. Why is Mercury the skillful one? Because he's not only intelligent, he's also a neuter. He's not male, he's not female. He's a neuter. He has access to both the male and female sides of us. Okay? Saturn's also a neuter. Problem is, Saturn is dumb. He doesn't like to talk. So he's not going to help you in the readings, right? But Mercury likes to communicate and talk and explain things, and he can access both your male and female intelligence. And Mercury is your planet of skills that you get through trying, through practicing. So you need to practice that. Don't get caught up in the intellectual, because astrology is not linear. Okay, for example, this says tips for readings. Everyone can see that, right? That might have this nice acronym, TIPS. T-S-P-I. No, it's T-I-P-S. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 things, reading. So this really says tips for readings in a non-linear way, in an astrological way. This is how astrology is. There's principles that make up techniques. The techniques are logical, but there's never a perfect chart, there's never a perfect technique, and so you can't approach it just from your male, intellectual, rational side. You have to let your female side come along to have the veto power and to point out what you miss. It's like having a good relationship. The queen gets the veto power. I don't think so. Or, honey, maybe you missed this. That's something women can do better than men. So if men think they have to make every decision and not listen to their woman, they're really hurting themselves. Because there's things they're going to miss that when their wife says, hey, what about this? They would have missed it if they don't listen to her. If they say, oh, don't tell me what to do, woman, then they're going to miss it. But historically, that has happened in relationships, right? And same thing, not giving women veto power. Oh, no, don't do that. Why, honey? I don't know, just don't do it. But it makes total sense to buy that house, that car, whatever, to get this job. And the wife says, I don't know, just don't do it, honey. And if the guy does it, he's surely to find himself in a world of hurt. But if he listens to the veto power of his life will get better. So same thing is happening within ourselves. Our male side is like, being the big, powerful, I know astrology, and I'm a great astrologer, and let me talk about astrology and tell you everything I know about astrology. But that won't make us have good readings. We need our female side going, what about this, honey? You missed this. Look at this, to your male side. And your female side needs to go, no, veto that. No, don't say that. It's not that. That's a no. I know it looks perfect on paper, but no, don't say that. And if you watch yourself doing readings, you'll get these feelings where I remember once I was looking at some of these dashas, and I had 3 levels of dashas on my screen. I was trying to figure out, it'll probably happen here. And I went to look at the screen when that time period was for, a 3 dasha level. And I'm looking at that time, and I was like, oh, okay. So let's say it was going to be Mars, Venus, Saturn. Let's say that's when I picked. And I go, okay, Mars, Venus, Saturn starts August. And I'm about to say August, but then my female side makes this other 3rd level dasha, say Mars, Venus, Jupiter, going beep, beep, and blinking, and going, hey, begging for attention. And I would just say, it's going to happen, or it did happen in this window, the one my female side pointed out, even though my male side decided it had to be this other one. And my female's like, no, not that one, pick this one. And I would go with it, and whenever I did that, it was always right. The prediction was always right. And a lot of those predictions, I would look back in hindsight, and I'd say, how did I make that prediction? I would try to rationalize how I made the prediction. I couldn't remember, because it wasn't a rational process. It started with a rational process, but there was a point where my female side came in and said, hey, veto that, look at this instead. And then you're doing a magical reading. That feels good. You're not working too hard. Think about it. If you're in a relationship, and if you have to do all the work, you got to raise the kids, you got to go to work, you got to clean the house, you got to cook dinner. Well, if you're the male, that's going to kill you, right? But if you're the female, that'll kill you too. But if as a male and female pair, you guys both take care of your lives gets enriched, right? It's the same way with using your male and female side to read the chart. if you're passing the ball back and forth between your male and female side, it's effortless. It's no work at all. You don't have to do 500 hours of prep work on a chart, figure it all out intellectually, make sure the time is perfect, adjust the time, spend another 4 hours on rectification, and now I'm ready for a reading, except I don't even want to ever look at astrology again. Okay? No. Or you can limit yourself to you're just using your female side and saying, okay, I'll just kind of see what I feel. I'll just look at it and feel. And you'll look at a chart and in 5 minutes your reading's over. It's like, what? I got a 5-minute reading? Yeah, that's all. This is a 5-minute reading. I see people do that a lot, especially with cards, you know. They'll throw down a deck of cards and they'll just say one thing, gather up the cards. I'm like, what about all those other cards? What about all the information in the card? But they just cast a bunch of cards and they get one impression about one thing and they say that one thing. And I'm thinking, but there's a whole story to all this. There's a bunch of details and stories. Please talk about each card. So a good card reader will cast the cards and he'll start with the card. He'll explain that card and move on to the next card. Every card is a jewel of information. And along with that rational technique-centered process, they will have their female side bringing it all together into the perfect prediction, the perfect reading. So that's how you have to do it. It's really, really important to integrate your male and female sides. It's the most important part. You can learn one technique and be a good astrologer if you do the rest of this. Or you can study thousands of techniques and be a useless astrologer as far as actually reading a chart is concerned if you don't do these things. So, this is all you need to do. Now, as you do your practice, people want to, the first hardest thing after actually starting to read charts, after breaking through that resistance of, this is so hard, and just trusting yourself to go with what you've learned and bring your female side along to guide you, is that it's getting clients. I always tell people, if you're capable of reading charts well, you only need to attract 10 clients. If you can get 10 clients in and do your job right for the amount of money that you're charging, that's all you need. You don't need to spend 5 hours a week on YouTube, making videos. You don't need to spend 5 hours a week talking about astrology on Facebook every week of your life. No, you don't need to. It's like advertising. People grow up and they see Tide commercials all their life. They watch cartoons and they watch whatever. They're seeing Tide commercials all their life. So when they go to the store, they come home with Tide. They don't even think about it. They just come home with Tide because they're comfortable and they're used to it. And advertisers know that if they can get their information in front of this many people, they will sell this much. It's just a statistical thing. Anything can sell. It doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be bad. If you get a product in front of a certain amount of people are going to buy it. That's why advertising is so huge in this world, because most things that are sold suck, and the only way to sell them is to get them in front of tons of people and get that marginal percentage to buy them. And they'll go, okay, I'm going to pay this much on advertising, I'm paying this much for the product, and if this much advertising gets this much sales, will I be able to make a profit? And if the answer is yes, they sell it. They don't even care what it is. So that's marketing. It's a statistical game of can we get this information, get this product in front of enough people at a price that we can make a profit for this product. And if yes, it's worth selling. That's business. That's modern business, okay? Now, a lot of astrologers are following that model. They think, I just need to get my stuff in front of a lot of people. I need to get in front of a lot of people. And yes, the more people you get in front of, the more readings you're going to get. But the minute you stop advertising, your readings will plummet. The same way, if Tide quit advertising, in a few years, no one would buy Tide. Unless Tide was really a good detergent. If it actually did a better job, it would still sell. Okay? And who knows? If it really did a good job and they reduced Tide by the price they have to charge because of all the millions of dollars of advertising put into Tide, they might even make more money at the end of the day because they don't spend all that money on the advertising, right? Same with you. If you're working so much hard time in advertising and promotions and YouTube and videos and Facebook and doing all this stuff, You have to calculate that into your hourly wage. And all of a sudden, the reading that you get paid $200 for, you're only getting $10 an hour. Wouldn't you be better doing none of that stuff and doing one good reading for $50 in an hour? You're making 5 times as much. So do the math. One person told me recently, they said, yeah, I know so many astrologers and they're exhausted looking. And I asked them why they look so tired, and they say because they're spending so much time trying to promote themselves to get readings. That they have no time for life anymore. They have no time to live healthy anymore and exercise and eat good food. They're basically working for peanuts. And because it takes so much time, they're forced to have to charge more for their readings. Because they have to pay for the advertising, right? The time that it takes for them to promote themselves. So get into this very vicious cycle where astrologers will be working too hard to get readings, putting too many hours to every reading, so their hourly wage drops. They have to increase the price of their readings, and now they're giving readings that aren't worth the price they're charging, or which are so high no one wants to pay. Okay? So that's a quick way to make your practice a lot harder. If you do this, if you do the tips for readings successfully, you learn good techniques, you study them, you practice them, and you integrate it in your male and female side when you do your readings, then you will do good readings. And they won't be painful. They won't be brutal. If your male and female is integrated, a reading won't be a painful thing that's so much work that you're wiped out for a day afterwards, okay? It'll be fun. It'll be easy. It'll be light. It'll be a fun thing to do. And you'll be able to work for way less money. So you'll be able to take clients for what they can pay you, okay? You won't scare a lot of clients away. As a new astrologer, you only can charge so much before it starts looking like, really, I've never heard of you. Why would I pay that much? But you'll be forced to charge that much if you're spending too much time on promoting your business or too much time on your prep work. And like I said in the beginning of this section, if you do these well, you'll read charts well. And when you read charts well, you don't need to advertise because people will come back and people will tell their friends. How I started my practice, I had just moved to a town. Now granted, it was a very nice little bliss bunny town, so lots of little devotees running around. So I went to the health food store and I made a little billboard out of an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock paper. And in it I wrote, just moved to the area, New Year's resolution special, doing all readings for free from December 15th to January 31st. Okay, I started my practice December 15th, 1995, okay? And I put that, and I got my apartment like a few days, like on the 13th I got my apartment, on the 15th I had that billboard out. And I put little business cards, I cut some slots in the piece of paper, put some business cards in there, and I just waited for people to call me. And so, person calls, yeah, can I come get a reading? I'm like, sure, come get a reading. They come in, give me $10, okay? Another person comes in, works at the health food store, gives me some shampoo, some soap, some lotion, like I really care, right? So I take all those presents. That was my donation. Another person comes in, gives me $80. Another person gives me $100. Another person gives me this many bucks. One person gave me, like $10. Him and his girlfriend came in. I read for both of them, and he goes, I'm sorry, that's all we got. It was a really good reading, but we have like nothing, I'm like, it's cool, don't worry about it. Well, that guy, a few years later, as I predicted, struck it rich. And he just called me out of the blue and he said, yeah, what's your address? I want to send you a check for that reading. I really appreciate it. I had no money then, but I'm financially good now. So I'm like, sure, give my address. He sent me a $1,500 check. And the good thing was, at that time, I was struggling, I was broke, I was married, I had a kid, I had no money for diapers, I was like so broke. That $1,500 like saved me that month. It like saved me. It did a lot more good for me then than it would have done, the 3 or 4 years before when I actually read that guy's chart. Okay, so I worked in this really weird way for a little while, and but the people that just came to find out about me, a lot of people, I got people who, were just really had nothing, just bliss bunnies with no money in this little yoga town, and but they knew about me and they liked the readings. So then they told their friends about me. And their friends had money, right? And those people told me, and one person goes, how much you charge? I said, oh, I just do it on donation. He's like, oh, well, you know, I'm a psychologist, and that was a really amazing reading. He goes, I'm going to pay you what my clients pay me. And every year he'd get a reading and send me a $300 check for a 1 hour reading. Every year he'd call me okay, it's my birthday, I want to read this year. And lots of times reading would just be 45 minutes, wouldn't even go a full hour. And he'd still give me a $300 check every year. So, never had to advertise. I never advertised after that, you know. Not that I haven't benefited from advertising. I've told you all the story about when KRS called me up to go on the show. It really helped me financially. But it never helped me get more readings. At that point, I was already had too many people who wanted readings before KRS even came along and introduced me to a bigger audience. That helped me sell more classes and more software, but didn't help me do more readings because at the time I was already maxed out in my capacity to do readings. I couldn't do anymore, you know. I've always been maxed out at my capacity to do readings simply because I did this. And I was very lucky in that I was always a really intellectually centered person. But when I started getting into Vedic astrology, I was also meditating 25 hours a week and living in an ashram. I started sort of my practice in the ashram. That's when I started reading charts. I just did it for free for all the devotees there. And it went really, really well because I was meditating 25 hours a week. And so my female side was really there. Living in an ashram, I wasn't stressed by all kinds of things where my male side had to fight the world all day long. And so my female side was with me more. So I was really lucky when I started doing readings with Vedic astrology. I was very integrated already. I had a lot of integration. I think that's the number one reason I was able to be a successful astrologer right off the bat. Okay? So you don't need to spend all that time. If you can just get some people to you, if you do a right job for those people, for how much you're charging them, more people will come. So if you're not getting returns, if you have to keep promoting yourself to get people to keep coming, then either A, you're charging too much for what you're giving, or you're simply not doing a good enough reading. And that might be hard for here, okay? But that's the simple truth. If in this business, if you do good readings, people know about it. People find out about it. People tell their friends, you know. They'll be talking to their girlfriend. Those girls say, oh gosh, my boyfriend broke up to me. And they'll say, you have to go see so-and-so. You have to go see this astrologer. Trust me, just go see him, you know. And if you're not slaving away doing promotions, spending 20 hours a week, 10 hours a week on promotions, when that person calls and maybe they don't have a lot of money, you can say, yeah, I'll do it for $100 instead of $200 because I'm not slaving away for YouTube. I'm not advertising. I'm not wasting time in advertising. So figure that part out. How much are you really putting into making a reading work? I'm trying to tell you the way to do it effectively so that you can actually do it for people without running yourself into the ground by over prep work or by spending too much time on advertising. And yes, have fun on YouTube. YouTube's a great way to get in front of people. And if you get 20 people calling from a reading because you got on somebody's YouTube channel and those 20 people came, then you get no more readings until you get on YouTube again, then you need to go back to your tips. And you need to integrate and do these tips more and get it together because something's wrong with your readings. Or you're charging so much and they might have gone and said, you know, it was a good reading, but oh my God, $250. It wasn't really worth $250. I mean, if I had 100, I'd say go, but $250, no, I don't go to that person. Just try someone else for $250. That's what they're saying, you know. And so, you know, figure out those dynamics. Here's just some tips from my own experiences. But I see a lot of people get into this trap feeling they have to promote themselves. Your best promotion is that what you have to offer is worth buying. If it's worth buying, people are going to buy it. And the best thing about that is your income will go up like this. That's what you want. You don't want to say, I have to hustle, 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 and the minute I stop hustling my business, it drops. No, you want to just keep going. So you can say, oh, I'm going to relax, and even though it's fun doing YouTube, people come to me because I'm a good astrologer, not because I'm plastered over YouTube. So I'm not going to spend any time on YouTube, even though it's fun to make fun YouTube videos. I'm just not going to do it because I'm going to be living somewhere with a bad internet connection. It's not going to be possible. And even then, for 6 months, you still do readings, just as many, and your income doesn't even go down. That's how it should be. You should be able to stop promoting and your income should stay the same. If you stop promoting, your income goes crash and burn. That means there's something wrong with what you're offering. And you need to take a hard look at that and figure out how you can offer something better, or how you can offer what you are offering for less money. And then your business will get kick-started again, and you come back to life. But it's no fun to run a business where it's all based on advertising, right? That's basically being a Vaishya. Being a Vaishya is marketing, right? How can I market myself? How can I get as much business as possible? That's not what being an astrologer is like, a Brahmin. A Brahmin is centered in himself. He's working on bringing his male and female sides together, right? Because his goal is spiritual development. And he uses astrology as part of that. And that out of that harmony, he attracts the readings that he can do correctly, that he can do right, okay, that he can do a good job on, and it'll work. There's one time I advertised. I did lie. I advertised once, okay? So I think after like a year of my practice, I said, I'm going to try advertising. I put a little ad out in one of these local little new age pick-up free magazines that was floating around Southern California. And it wasn't very expensive, maybe 25 or 50 bucks for this tiny little ad. I got one reading on that. I got one person who called me off the ad, who came in. A few people called, and they all called and were like 20 questions. Like, they wanted to ask me this and ask me that. They wanted to know about me, and so it took me like half an hour to talk to each of these people. And then so I'm like, they wanted me to sell themselves. I'm like, oh my God, now I have to talk this person to come into a reading? That was really weird, because I was used to people just calling and say, hey, I want a reading. Why? Because their friend already did the sales pitch. And now these people were calling me off this advertisement saying, hey, what about this? And can you do this? And do you know this? And who did you study with? And da-da-da, and da-da-da. And it was just a waste of my time, right? So all of a sudden my hourly rate just went down. Then one person came in from that ad. Only had one person actually came for the reading, And they came in, and it was a horrible reading. It was like the worst reading of my early practice, I couldn't read the chart worth shit, and it was a bad reading. Of course, they never sent anyone back. Because when you just leave yourself open as a Brahmin should, you're going to attract the people that you're going to best be able to help. And trying to become a salesman, a Vaishya, you're lowering yourself as an astrologer. You're not really being an astrologer, okay? Because you're no longer in the spirit of anything but marketing, okay? Now, with that said, you need to get yourself out there. You have to say, okay, world, I do readings. How do you do that? Yes, get on YouTube. Yes, if you're one of my students, let's do a YouTube together. But don't think you're going to have your practice is going to be great because you're promoting yourself. That's an exhausting way to do it. And it's a way that the minute you stop the promotions, your income goes down. Which means when you break your leg and you can't do your YouTube videos anymore, how are you going to get readings? Whereas if you just get readings because you do good readings, and so people sell you to other people, then if you break your leg and can't do a YouTube video or whatever, or break your face, let's say, and don't want to appear on YouTube because you're all wrapped up in bandages, you can still sit in your bed on the phone and do a reading and still make your money, okay? So those are my tips, and that I would recommend to you who want to learn to read charts, and for those who want to take it professionally, listen to your response from your clients. Let your clients do your advertising for you, and do the advertising you want. But your business, if it's going to be successful, is going to be based on your clients advertising for you. Word of mouth is the best form of advertisement. People trust their friends. When their friends say, you've got to get a reading with so-and-so, they're going to trust that friend way more than anything you could ever say on YouTube. Okay? All right. Thank you.